Just woke up from a midday summer siesta. It's been a slow day. I'm on my way to a podcast interview. I will share more with you when it's out. Obviously, I'm recording this to go and meet the person. And it's all about expats. I think it's something that is going to be interesting for some of you guys who are interested in expat life, especially here in Greece. So I will certainly share more with you when this podcast interview is out. But anyways, let's just go and meet this person who has just arrived here in Nafplio, and maybe I can show you behind the scenes. How about that? Let's just do this.
No, yo trabajo para una empresa alemana.
Ajá.
La empresa que es trabajamos 100% en remoto.
Ah, ok.
Lo que me permite trabajar desde aquí como si estuviera allí, pero trabajando acá.
Pero vives aquí en Atenas.
Sí.
Wow, qué bueno.
Desde hace 3 años, mi pareja es arqueóloga.
Okay.
Y yo como trabajo en remoto, pues le sigo un poco donde va ella.
Wow. ¿Y tu pareja es griega?
Ella es alemana.
Alemana, o sea que son dos alemanes aquí en Grecia.
Yo soy de Barcelona.
Tú eres de Barcelona, sí, es verdad, tú eres de Barcelona, sí, claro.
Pero
trabajas por una compañía alemana.
Yo me fui a vivir a Alemania.
Ok, o sea que tú eres un expat aquí en Grecia.
Totalmente.
Trabajando online.
Trabajando online. Sí.
Bravo.
Lo que ahora se conoce como digital nomad, que tampoco es lo que soy realmente.
Sí.
No voy rebotando de país en país.
Sí, lo mismo conmigo. Yo tampoco soy digital nomad, pero sí trabajando online completamente aquí en Grecia. O sea que tú eres una persona que podrías entrevistarte a ti mismo, básicamente.
Sí, de hecho, al principio del podcast, en su inicio, hice un episodio inverso. O sea,
tú solo
un amigo me entrevistó a mí.
Claro. Qué interesante. Ok. I really enjoy my conversation with Mark, and again, I will share the podcast interview whenever Mark releases it. Now, he's running a podcast which is all about expat life. After talking to Mark and after meeting many expats, I noticed a pattern, and obviously I want to share with you the most common challenges that you might face as an expat. So number one, and this is an obvious one, I've mentioned this before here on the channel, and the main challenge is the language, right? Yes, it's true that here in Greece people speak English. Nevertheless, I've seen expats struggle with this aspect of the language, even though they said to themselves many times before that they don't need to learn Greek. They still have expressed this thing, which is a challenge, because they want to go beyond ordering a souvlaki and a freddo espresso. They want to go a little bit deeper. A lot of people feel, that they don't have to learn the language if they're an expat. They might just feel a sense of entitlement to a certain extent, which I have seen as well. I've seen that play out very much with some expats, meaning that they feel that, hey, everybody in Greece speaks English, or they should know how to speak English. But I have dealt with a lot of things here in Greece, including services or even banks, that you will think that they will have a knowledge of English strong enough to communicate with a foreigner, and they don't. So Greeks do speak English, but you have to be aware that even when dealing with services, and I'm just using banks because it's something that I have had many experiences over the phone, and I'm always surprised to see that people that are on the phone from a bank, that they should have the knowledge to speak in very simple words in English about what I need help with, right? And that's just an example. And this is true in any country for that matter, not just Greece. If you move to England, for example, and you're Greek and you don't speak English, you're going to struggle quite a lot. Number two, bureaucracy, okay? Even I need help. For example, dealing with my accountant and taxation and all of that, because I work online. I rely heavily on my wife for that, because I don't want to deal with the red tape. I don't want to deal with any update when it comes to taxation and income tax and my contribution as someone who works online and lives here in Greece, right? And even though I am an immigrant and I am not an expat, so to speak, and I am not a digital nomad either, I still work online, and I'm a foreigner, right? But I'm a permanent resident here in Greece, and still my situation can be a little bit complicated for the average accountant. Okay, number 3, cultural differences. Okay, any country that you travel to and you're a foreigner, you are gonna find cultural things that you might not be aware of. Okay, stuff that is not really written in the books, and you can only experience them once you travel and you're living there. Even for a short period of time, you might start to notice them, and yeah, it might take some time for you to comprehend the unwritten social rules of the country, but this is something that a lot of people find it challenging, and expats that I have met, they seem to not understand certain things. It's kind of like unwritten rules of the culture. This comes down to as well making friends, right? How do you make friends when the culture is different? And this applies for everybody that lives in a foreign country. It can be a challenge to make friends, even as an expat, that you might be living in a country for a couple of years, and you still want to socialize. I've seen this be a major issue with a lot of expats, that they express these feelings, and even though they gather together in Facebook groups, and they do in-person meetups as well, people from different countries, they do this because they want to be integrated in some way in the culture, and it's just not enough to be part of a Facebook group with different foreigners. They want to go deeper, and I understand this very, very well. I understand the struggle, and it's one of the things that the culture, even though Greeks are very, very friendly, but because you're not from here, and they might invite you and you might be part of something, but to make friends and to make real connection, especially when you don't live here, it can be a real challenge, especially if your job is completely odd to them. Like for example, me, I work online, so as much as I have integrated in the community, the fact that I work online, it still makes me like an odd person here in the Greek culture in community where I live. Yeah, in Athens and bigger cities, this might be more common, obviously, but still, because you don't speak the language, because you haven't lived here long enough, and because there's so many factors that might make it difficult for you to comprehend the culture. If you're an expat, the best thing for you is to have a private health insurance. Okay, I mean, if something happens to you, you can still go to a public hospital here in Greece, but it's most likely that you already have some type of private health insurance, which is the wise thing to do. I mean, here in Greece, even we have a private health insurance through my wife's work, and this is just something that they offer to the employees. If you're curious, my wife works for a publishing company here in Greece, in Athens, and there's a lot of foreigners that work there, Americans and native English speakers that live here in Greece, and most of them, they just travel and they live here in Greece, and they have a job with this publishing company, and they offer different things, of course, and one of them is a private health insurance, if you will. So, but if you're an expat, this will be something to consider for sure. You probably already thought about that anyways, but I guess it was something that I wanted to mention here as well. Okay, I mean, here in Greece, me as a resident and my family and everything, we have we're part of the system. It's a free service, right? It's free health services we have here, but at the same time, I have a private doctor for myself. The same is with dentist. Okay, it's quite affordable, and you have your own doctor. So I have my doctor with my wife. We have a pediatrician for my kids as well, but it's just something that you have to really take in consideration, that if you're an expat, you're certainly going to have private health insurance for sure, for travelers health insurance or whatever, because it's the best thing that you can actually do. Okay, the next one, it seems like it's obvious, but at the same time, a lot of people have questions about the climate here. It depends where you live in Greece, where you're gonna be located, okay? But as you know, Greece is, it gets really hot. As I'm recording this, it's summertime. In fact, we're in the middle of a heat wave, so it gets really, really hot. I know a couple of expats that are really concerned about how hot it gets and the use of air conditioning, and how expensive it's going to be for them because they're not really sure. This is their first summer here. This is a true story. As well, in the winter time, a lot of people ask questions of how the winter is in Greece. Again, it depends what part of Greece you're going to live. Okay, because in some places it gets colder than where I live, for example. So it depends where you're gonna live, but climate, you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared for hot summers. Get used to the climate, get used to what we do here in Greece when it comes down to different weather seasons. So in the summer, in midday, usually everything is shut down, and unless you're in Athens or a big city, but the culture is one of having siestas and naps in when it's mesimeri, okay, when it's midday, because of the heat, and this is a cultural thing, and this is a Mediterranean thing, really. But in the winter, things seems to slow down quite a lot in many places, especially the islands, right where I live, because it's a all year round destination for holidays. It still slows down, but doesn't slow down as much as the islands. All right, I can tell you that. So, but there is a drop in terms of activities of what you see around, like people and movement and shops. Even some shops, they just close completely for the winter. Some businesses are just operating on a seasonal basis, like whenever it gets warm. And you have to understand these things. Again, if you're in Athens, it could be a little bit different, but if you're in the countryside or in rural areas, you will feel this more. And if you live in an island, you gotta be prepared for that. If you've never been to a Greek island before in the winter, you have no idea how it is. You have no idea how life is in a Greek island in the winter time. It's very, very different. So that idea of glamorizing the Greek island life, and if you want to work remote, or if you want to be an expat or a digital nomad working in a Greek island, it's cool when it's the summertime. In the wintertime, it's going to be a completely different story. You got to be prepared to be pretty much in isolation. A lot of the boats do not go to the islands because of the weather. I mean, there's so many things. I will probably have to record a whole separate video talking about that topic, but I know that a lot of foreigners and expats, they struggle with even the heat, because they're not used to it, and they think that they can just go out and about midday when it's 42 degrees and go for a hike, right? I mean, quite recent, as I'm recording this video, there's a lot of tourists who have just died because they have decided to go for a hike in either in a Greek island or whatever, in the middle of the mesimeri, okay? And when there's 40 degrees out there, and it's just not a wise thing to do. Nobody does that here in Greece. Absolutely nobody, right? And you have to get used to that idea of how the climate is here in Greece. And you might come from a hot weather place yourself, but that's over there. It's not Greece. And you have to be aware of those things. It's little things like that, okay? And get used to that. Again, it gets tied up to the culture. That's what I want to say. Because things seems to be very slow in mesimeri, midday, people tend to go out later on in the day, meaning around 6 o'clock, and later, okay, 6 or 7. Shops start to open again, and you see a little bit of more life, especially in the summertime. Okay, so between the hours of 2 o'clock and 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon in the summer, you see like a drop in terms of what's happening around, and then people start to go out again in the evenings, and that's why the shops are open so late. That's why you see a lot of families and kids out and about at 9 o'clock in the evening, and even 10 o'clock in the evening with a coffee in hand, just taking the kids to the playground. I mean, that's a classic Greek thing to do, and that's because of the climate, and it has to do as well with the culture. All right, so everything is tied up together. Everything that I'm saying here is somehow tied up together with this thing that for you might be odd to just be out and about in the evening and see, you know, someone with a coffee and it's 10 o'clock in the evening and going with their kids in a pushchair to the playground, and then they're gonna go to a taverna and eat. That's perfectly normal here in Greece, right? But you as an expat living here, you might feel like that's too late for you to have a coffee. That's number one. And number two, you know, you're just getting ready to either go to bed or you just want to go out if you're young, and, you know, and you want to be out and, you know, go for drinks and stuff like that, you know, which, you know, obviously the young do that, right? If you don't have kids, you're not following the schedule that I'm just mentioning here, but I'm just trying to paint a picture here for you so you can see what happens when it comes down to different seasons. Okay, your idea of Greece is just Mykonos and Santorini and Athens and the Acropolis, and that's that. But you know, there's more to Greece than just that, especially when it comes down to the different seasons. The next one is quite obvious for a lot of you guys, and if you've been to Greece before, you probably are aware of this, is the infrastructure, okay? There is something here in Greece that the infrastructure seems to be a little bit behind a couple of years, okay, to say the least, and that's just the nature of the country, you know, economical reasons and whatnot, but, you know, when it comes to public transport, there's certain things. Obviously, if you live again in the capital or Thessaloniki, a big city, things seem to be a little bit more advanced or normal compared to the other European countries. But if you live outside of these big cities, then you're gonna notice the infrastructure and different services not being there. And you know, I live in a small community. I live in the countryside, and what is called here in Greece eparchia. It's a very small town, and you know, I got used to this. I got used to the infrastructure of certain things and services being, you know, not where they need to be, or at least not for what I was used to when I was living in England and in other countries that I have lived before I relocated here to Greece, like America and whatnot. Canada or whatever. But this is something that a lot of expats mention as well, that the infrastructure here, obviously, I mean, it's kind of like shocking for a lot of people and certain things, and you know, it's just something to consider. And again, this depends of where you're going to be located. If you're an expat and you're going to be working and living somewhere remote, or even if you want to retire, you know, I've met people that retire here where I live actually, and this is the first time that they've been here, and they actually are staying here for like a whole year. And I met one person who was just full of complaints, and you know, he didn't know what to expect, or you know, he was not prepared for it. And you know, you have to be informed where you're going, what you want, what you expect to get from the community, what you expect to experience when it comes down to the place where you're going to be living. Yeah, infrastructure is not perfect here in Greece, you know, and it depends what you want. Like I said, I've said it before. Where I live, you know, I don't have access to many things that people in Athens have, but I live here by choice, and it's precisely because of that I want to live here, because I don't want to have access to major things, and I'm willing to make that compromise. But I live a very happy life here, and a very simple life, and my kids are enjoying a great childhood here, making friends. It's very secure, and I'm going to talk about that on a future video anyways, when it comes down to families and relocating here to Greece, and families who actually are living here in Greece, here where I live specifically, and with kids. You know, I know, for example, a Dutch family who came from the Netherlands, and they didn't go to Athens. They're living here, actually. They're not even living here in Nafplio. They're living in the outside of Nafplio. So they live in a proper horio, in a proper village. But they have their kids here, you know. Young kid that is going to a kindergarten and everything, learning Greek. And but it's precisely because of that, you know, kind of like a village lifestyle, with all of the negative that it has, okay? And you know, infrastructure there is not perfect. In fact, this person actually is building his own home, or has a house that he's working on, that they bought, like a house that is just, you know, a derelict or whatever, and they're actually rebuilding it and fixing it. So it depends what you want, and there's many opportunities for that actually. Just buy something that is, an old house that is just, it's been abandoned or whatever, and just buy it and then rebuild it. That's a great example of what a lot of foreigners do here, by the way. A lot of foreigners come here because of that, because the infrastructure is not where it needs to be, especially when it comes down to certain houses and old homes that have been just, they're just derelicts and they're just falling apart, and they still have some type of value. And a lot of foreigners, what they do is that they invest on that and they redo them. And then yes, either they live there or they just rent it out as a holiday home and whatnot. But that's something that you have to be aware of as well if you're an expat. And again, this depends, where are you going to be living. If you're going to be living in Athens, you're going to experience a certain different lifestyle when it comes down to the lifestyle that I experience here where I live. So that's something to take in consideration. And finally, the cost of living. So here in Greece, the cost of living for a lot of expats is quite affordable, but it will change quite a lot depending on where you live. Again, if you live in Athens, in the center of Athens, your expenses are going to be very different with the expenses that someone like myself might have in a place like this. Even though this is a tourist destination where I live, so it's probably not a good comparison, because prices here where I live, they're quite expensive actually because of the nature of this place. But if you live in the surrounding areas of where I live, then the prices might be different, might be more affordable when it comes down to housing and all of the rest. But where I live right now in Nafrio, it's quite expensive actually. So I will say that it's about the same, if not more, than certain places in Athens, with consideration, of course. Athens is such a big city that from borough to borough, the prices are very, very different. So again, it's something that you need to consider. But prices is just, it's one of those things. If you go to an island, for example, and rent a place, and then you have your bills and your utilities, it could be very different compared to the prices that you might find in Athens or Thessaloniki or Volos or Patra. It really, really depends where you're going to live. So this is something that you have to do your homework. And again, if you're earning money from abroad, then you might be in a better condition than the average Greek here. Okay. For example, Mark, going back to the interview with Mark, he earns with a German salary, but he lives here in Greece, so he's in a much better position than other people that might be living here that have an average job here in Greece, for example. Okay, I mean, there's so much out there when it comes down to working as an expat abroad and living like a digital nomad and all of this. But I do believe that a lot of it as well is very glamorized. I gotta say that. It's very easy to just go by the beach and glamorize the certain lifestyle. I try not to do that too much here on the channel, because I live here and I have a family here and I work online, and I just try to share my life here in Greece as a foreigner. Even though I have become Greek, some of you guys have mentioned that I'm almost Greek because I behave like one, I think like one, and because I live here and I understand the culture. But this is what happens when you live in a certain place. I've met Greeks that have lived many years in America and Australia, and I meet them here, and yeah, to me they're American and they are Australians. They're not Greeks, even if they speak Greek. They're thinking like an American, they're thinking like a Australian, and yeah, it's completely different. But the cost of living here in Greece is quite affordable for foreigners, but it's very expensive for Greeks because of the nature of how income and salaries and the cost of living here in Greece is. It's a very similar pattern in Venezuela as well. Okay. England now, I left England 14 years ago, but I know that after Brexit, a lot of things have changed in England when it comes down to the cost of living. And cost of living everywhere, as far as I'm concerned, it never matches the salary. So we have to do something different. And that's why I have a big passion for entrepreneurship. And in order for us to really do something different and not just rely on the man or the status quo in order for us to earn a living, right? That's just me. That's what I'm really passionate about, and I try to spread those ideas for those of you who want to embark in that journey of entrepreneurship, which is the conversation that I was having with Mark, on the podcast. wherever you go as an expat, even for Greeks that want to live from here to go to Germany or to England or to America, you're going to face the same challenges that I mentioned here. All right, the language, cultural differences. You might face bureaucracy at a different level, maybe. You're certainly going to have to face different things when it comes down to the cost of living, of course. What are you going to do for a living? And it's one of the things that I didn't mention here on this video about work, because if you're watching this, it's because you want to become an expat here in Greece, and you already know what you're going to be doing, like work-wise. But when it comes to work for foreigners, this is something that I can talk about on a different video. All right, but expats that I have met here, they have already figured that out, meaning that they already have work, they have already sorted that out, and it's just a matter of coming to Greece, or they're already living here in Greece and they work like Mark, or I know people here that they work from home or online, or they do different things. I know a Welsh guy that he's another software engineer. He lives in a small village here in Greece. I mentioned a little bit about that on a past video. He lives even in a smaller village than I live. I mean, I live in a town, really small town, but this person, the Welsh guy, he's with a Greek wife, and he lives in a village which is, I don't know, maybe 2,000 people, maybe 3,000 people, and there's nothing there. Okay, but that's the life that he wants to live, and he's a software engineer. He works completely remote. There's another person that I know here that he works as a language teacher through the wires, completely, with a wife. Many people, when you find yourself in a certain situation and you become someone that lives in a certain place, and you're connected with certain people, it's very easy to just meet people that are like you or similar to you. Okay, meaning like, okay, I know people that work online, but the only reason why I know a lot of people that are either self-employed or work for a foreign company is because of that. It's because I'm a foreigner. Okay, and yeah, there's a lot of foreigners here in Greece as well. A lot of people that choose to live here, even though there's a lot of Greeks that leave in search of a better life somewhere else. There's a lot of foreigners that come here as well, with families and whatnot, and couples and whatever, and they want to start a life here. They want to, people move all the time. So it's not that everybody's leaving and nobody's coming into the country. So but I know quite a lot, and I might talk a little bit more about work and employment, even though I cannot find you a job as an English-speaking person. But there are jobs. I've mentioned here before that even I get targeted on social media with ads from jobs for Spanish-speaking people, right? I don't know what these jobs are, but I think they're telemarketing or whatever. But jobs here in Greece, here in Athens, that they're looking for people that speak Spanish, native Spanish speakers, to work here in Athens. And I fit the bill, right? Because I speak Spanish, because I'm from Venezuela. So there is jobs here in Greece, even for foreigners, but this is a topic for a different video, of course. Anyways, guys, I'm doing this in my car. It's really warm. I'm gonna go home now. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for all the love and support, and of course I'll see you in another video.